All right. The last guy we'll look at is Erik Erikson. Erikson's a psychologist. He's very Freudian. But he's important to sociology because he was the only one who sees the socialization process or human growth and development as taking place during your entire life. The other ones, Freud and Mead and Piaget and Gillick, all those, once you kind of reached adulthood, things were kind of set. There really wasn't a whole lot of change that took place at that point. But Erikson said this socialization process is a lifelong process, and that we enter through stages all through life. Okay. In fact, we go through 8 stages. Now, aren't you glad you don't have to memorize all these? All right. 8 stages. So Erikson says we go through 8 stages. At each stage, there's a basic conflict and a key event. Okay, a basic conflict and a key event. So here they are. Stage 1 is infancy. So from birth to about 18 months or so. This is very, very similar to Freud's oral stage. It's infancy. And the challenge here is trust versus mistrust. That's the basic conflict. Trust versus mistrust. In other words, an infant is learning trust or mistrust. And so if a person's in their 30s and they're still having trust issues where they just have they can't commit to a job, they're in and out of one broken relationship after another, and it all comes down to they just have a hard time trusting people, it could be because of what happened to them as an infant. And basically, were they nurtured and cared for? And so feeding is the important event. And so as an infant, if I'm well taken care of, I'm nourished, and I receive love and those kind of things, I learn to trust. If I'm neglected, abuse, or different things like that, I'm learning mistrust at that stage, and it could follow me the rest of my life. Okay, so infancy is trust versus mistrust, and the key event is feeding. Stage 2 is toddlerhood. He also called it the muscular anal stage, so you see Freud's terminology there. Toddlerhood. The basic conflict is autonomy versus shame. The key event, of course, is potty training, toilet training. And here's how it works. This is the toddler, up to about age 4 or so, where all the attention for a parent is teaching their child how to go potty. Toilet training, get them out of diapers. Now think about this. How, as a parent, how you handle the toilet training process is going to make a difference between a child feeling autonomous, that's on their own, or feeling shame and doubt. Now, autonomy means to be on their own, and here's how it works. And if you've got kids who've gone through this stage, you know it. Once they learn how to go potty, they think they can do anything. I learned to go potty, let me drive the car. All right? I mean, they think they got it down. Because we tell them, you're a big boy, big girl now. And so they learn to go potty. Now all of a sudden they think they can do anything on their own. And that's a good thing. That's autonomy. If, on the other hand, through that process of toilet training, they get overly disciplined and they get shamed a lot because, they keep having accidents, now all of a sudden, as a 3-year-old, they're starting to have self-image issues. And so as a parent, you've got to be really, really careful because a big part of toilet training is the development of a certain muscle, which is why he calls it muscular anal. And until that muscle is developed, and the muscle is what tells you got to go to the bathroom, okay? Until that muscle is developed, kids are going to have accidents, especially at nighttime. Because, for some kids, they sleep really, really heavy, and so that muscle has got to be fully developed in order for it to wake them up out of a dead sleep. And for some kids, they could be 10, 11, 12 years of age and still have accidents at nighttime. And if you shame them, man alive, you're setting them up for a tough life. Now, in the middle of the day, when they know better and they know they got to go to the bathroom, but they're just too lazy because they're too busy playing, so they go in the corner and sit down, well, that may need to be disciplined. But the accidents at night, no one who's developing correctly, who has no mental problems, no one wants to lay in bed in their own urine. So that's why they call it an accident. That they shouldn't be punished for having accidents at night. Because until that muscles develop, they're going to have accidents.
Kids get punished for that all the time.
They get punished for that all the time. And then if you would follow them, not all of them, but a lot of them, once they become teenagers, they have self-image issues. They have shame. They have doubt. I can't do anything. And it could be a Freudian psychologist is going to, tell me about your relationship with your mom. Well, it was pretty good, but about the toilet training, man, I just got so many, smacks and got disciplined so much. And there's the root of the shame and the doubt and things that you have. All right? And so now, on the other hand, these kind of things, if you put this on the column, the left-hand column, the right-hand column kind of go together. It's not for sure, but like in the first stage, if you learn trust, well, then there's a good chance at the second stage you'll learn autonomy. On the other hand, the first stage you learned mistrust, then that kind of sets you up where unless something changes, you're probably going to learn the doubt and the shame in the next stage. Does that make any sense? So one does kind of prepare you for the other, all right? So autonomy and shame, and the key event is toilet training. Stage 3 is preschool. Here, the basic conflict is initiative versus guilt. And the important event is independence. So preschool, you're talking, 4 or 5-year-olds, up until they start elementary school, basically. And here's initiative means to do things on your own, to take the initiative. Right? It is at this stage, and for some reason there seems to be more girls than boys. It's at this stage that little Sally takes the initiative to cut her little brother's hair. All right, has that ever happened in anybody's house? The little 4-year-old, 5-year-old girl gets a pair of scissors and decides she's going to cut. It starts with the Barbie dolls. Now she moves on to, she's taking the initiative. Now, again, if, as a parent, there's always balance involved. If every time your child takes the initiative and wants to do something on their own, and you say, no, you can't do it, you're not old enough, well, then you see, instead of learning initiative, they're learning guilt. On the other hand, so as a parent, when they take the initiative, you got to figure out a way to let them take the initiative but not hurt themselves. If I'm outside cutting the grass and my 5-year-old comes up to me and says, I want to cut the grass, and I say, well, here, go for it. I'm going to go watch football. That's not a good parent, right? But maybe the child, this may not be safe, but maybe the child kind of walks in front of me, or I put the child on my shoulders and I keep cutting the grass. Or in my case, I go to Kmart and buy a plastic lawnmower that you put water in and it blows bubbles. Right. You ever seen that? And so I'm cutting the grass and my son is falling behind me with his little lawnmower bubbles. Everybody thinks that's all cute, Or if I'm changing the oil in the car, if my wife's baking in the kitchen and, a 5-year-old daughter comes up and says, I want to make some brownies. And my wife says, okay, here's the ingredients. I'm going to take a nap. No, but what does a mom do? The mom kind of stands behind them, and the kids think they're doing it on their own. In reality, that's good parenting. But if every time, the problem is, if I'm changing the oil in my car, and my son comes and says, I want to help, as a dad, if I'm not careful, the thought is, because I know if I let him help me, it's going to take me twice as long. And I just want to get this done so I can go back inside. And so I say, no, son, just, let Daddy finish and then we'll play later. Let me finish up real quick, but go inside, and when I'm done, we'll go do something. And then we forget and don't do anything. And then I know this may not mean a lot to you. You do that over time, then the song The Cat's in the Cradle starts playing over in your head. You didn't give them time when they were young, and now you're old, they don't give you time. That's kind of the song. It's an old classic, old classic song. And so there's that balance. When they take the initiative, you got to let them, because if you don't, all they learn is guilt. And so you got to balance that out, all right? Stage 4 is pre-adolescence. It's elementary school, basically. The basic conflict is industry, which is, again, creating things, doing things. So it's either going to be industry or inferiority, and the key event is school. Now, here's how it works. And this is use your imagination with me, and we're going to do a sociological experiment. Okay? I don't know the answers, I just know the problems, all right? But you walk into a room, so our sociology experiment is we're going to walk into a room of 20 first graders. It's their very first day of school. All right, very first day of school. Now, the vast majority of children cannot wait to start school. Now, very, very quickly, some of them learn that they don't like it. But most kids cannot wait for that very first day of school. So we're going to walk into a room of 20 first graders, so they're 6 years old. Maybe some are 7, but 6 years old. 20 of them, and we're going to ask them one very simple question. The question is this: how many of you can draw? What kind of response do you get? Oh, they all can. And they're going to show you they can. Now, in reality, ain't no one of them can draw with a lick. But they think they can. Right, now, we're going to follow those same 20 students all through elementary school. So now it's the last day of 6th grade. They're about the next year they'll go into 7th grade, and they all stay together, surprisingly. So the last day of 6th grade, we walk into the same 20 students, and we ask them the same question. How many of you can draw? What kind of response do you get?
Only like a quarter of them.
You'd be lucky if more than one did. Well, what happened in that 6-year period? It's not a trick question. Somebody told them they couldn't draw. And so instead of industry, inferiority. Now it could have been a classmate, because kids can be cruel, can't they? They look over, man, that sucks. Or it could have been a teacher who didn't say you can't draw, but the student realizes, man, every time I turn in a drawing to Mrs. So-and-so, she puts it in the desk drawer. Every time Naomi turns in a drawing, she puts it on the wall outside. And so they learn, I can't draw. So what do we do then? Do we level the playing field and we tell everybody they can draw, and we don't give grades, and we don't keep score and all that so they all feel good about themselves? No, that doesn't help anything. But what you got to do as a parent is recognize how brutal those elementary school, where these kids who have been initiative doing everything are going to be told there's something they can't do. And what you hope as a parent and what you've got to look for is that there's something that your child can do and does well. And that's what you feed. And so what you would hope is in 6th grade, we go in and we say, how many of you can draw? Maybe one or two will raise their hand. But Johnny may raise his hand and say, I can't draw, but I'm really good at multiplication tables. Or I can't draw, but I know how to play the piano. Or I can't draw, but I can throw a football. You see, that's what you want. But you find something that your child can do very well, and that's what you feed. But now here's the thing, and this is mainly to dads. If you ever become a dad, remember I said it here first. What you got to be careful of is you got to find out what, and you sons, you got to find out what your son does well, and that's what you got to encourage. And what he does well may not be what you wanted him to do well. And so if you wanted your son to get into sports, but he would rather play the flute, and he's good at that, and you don't let him do that because you're trying to push, you are feeding inferiority instead of industry. You see. You find out what the child is good at, and that's what you feed, and then they learn industry. If you don't, then inferiority is the next thing, all right? Stage 5. I have 5 minutes. Stage 5 is adolescence. The basic conflict is identity versus role confusion, and of course the key event is peer relationships. Every child goes through a stage in life where what their friends think of them is more important than what their parents think of them. So if you're a parent, just buckle up and enjoy the ride. If you're not a parent, just remember that when you become a parent. That when your child is 6 years old, they think you hung the moon. When they're 13 years old, you can't do anything right to save your life. Okay, you're the biggest idiot in the world. And they all wish you were like their friends' parents. That's just part of growing up because it shifts. And as a result, you have identity versus role confusion. The kids they're trying to find the place they belong. Go into any high school in Nashville, it's public high schools, and all you got to do is walk through the cafeteria and you see this because the cafeteria is segregated into all the different groups. You've got the athletes over here, the band people over there, the goths over there, and so a person walks in the first day of high school and they're looking around and saying, okay, which group do I fit in? You see. And you may have had friends who you were in school your whole life together, and in elementary school, you guys were inseparable. By the time you graduated from high school, it's not that you didn't like each other anymore, but you hardly ever saw each other anymore. Because high school hit, you found one group, they found another group. This role confusion, this identity, and it's all based on peers. Where do I belong? All right, and so it's a difficult time. I mean, high school or teenage years are tough. Stage 6 is young adulthood. This is 18 to 40. I mean, this is a big age span. So I assume that's most everybody in this room but me. 18 years of age to about 40 years of age. So that's most everybody in the room. Anybody 40 besides me? All right, so is anybody 17? Any dual enrolled students? How old are you? 16? I didn't drop down low enough. All right, so he's still in stage 5. He's still trying to figure out what group he belongs to. All right. So 18 to 40. Now the basic conflict is intimacy versus isolation. This is, am I ever going to find Mr. Right, Mrs. Right? Am I going to find the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, or am I going to be alone the rest of my life? And so the key event is love relationships. The closer you get to 30, if you're 18 years old, marriage is the farthest thing from your mind. If you're 21 years old, you're never going to get married. But when you get 29, it's like, okay, when am I going to get married? The closer you get to 30, society puts more and more pressure on you to settle down. All right, so that's the love relationship. All right, stage 7 is middle adulthood. Now, how many stages are there? 8. Okay, I'm in stage 7, which means what? I only got one more stage to go. I'm about done. I'm about done, man. It's kind of depressing, isn't it? The basic conflict, this is 40 to 65, basically. I mean, again, these aren't exact figures, but just generally speaking. Okay, the basic conflict is generativity versus stagnation. Generativity is the idea, again, of creating and leaving something behind. Are you generating anything? Stagnation is not doing anything. Or another word for stagnation would be midlife crisis. Okay. The key event is parenting, which really sounds strange because by the time you're in your 40s, your kids are grown. But really, in a lot of ways, that's just when parenting really begins. Because you see, when you're 18, you can't believe how stupid your parents are. Then by the time you get 23, you can't believe how much they've learned in 4 years. I mean, attitudes change. And so by the time you get in your 20s, all of a sudden, if you got a good relationship with your parents, you're going to them for advice. What should I do? How do I handle this situation? And so parenting really begins. But here's how it works. The closer you get to 40, all right, you're going to start to realize that you're never going to do all that stuff you said you're going to do. The simple truth of life is you can do anything in the world you want to do, but you can't do everything you want to do. You can be anything in the world you want to be, but you can't be everything you want to be. So the closer you get to 40, you start to reprioritize your life. You recognize my life's halfway over. What am I going to do with the rest of it? And if you decide I'm going to generate, and what most people decide is that family is the most important thing in life. When they hit 40. And they realize I've been pursuing the dollar, I've been after this career, and the only people who have been with me through it all is my family. And so if you generate means what am I going to leave behind for my family? What am I doing with the rest of my life? How can I make this world a better place than when I came? That kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Stagnation means forget it all. I'm going to go back, start all over again, get a new wife, new car, new house, and just not do anything. Or not do anything important kind of thing, all right? Now that sets you up for the 8th stage, which is old age. And the challenge is integrity versus ego despair, and the key event is accepting your role in life. And here's the difference, okay? I assume you all know old people who are in their 80s and 90s, who they're a lot of fun to be around. They tell funny stories, not because they've got Alzheimer's, but they tell funny stories. They got a lot of life, and they're fun to be around, right? That person is sitting in their rocking chair looking back over their life, and they have ego integrity. In other words, they're happy with the way things turned out. Sure, there might be some things they changed, but overall, if you ask them, you said, it's been a good life. I've had my ups and downs, but it's been a lot of fun. That's ego integrity. On the other hand, you probably all know older people as well in their 80s and 90s who they are the most miserable people you've ever met before in your life. They hate you. They hate everybody. They hate life. Right? What happens is they're on the rocking chair looking back over their life, and they have despair. They have all kinds of regrets, you see. And a lot of it has to do with stage 7. The person who decides to generate ends up with ego integrity. The person who decides to stagnate ends up with despair. The person who decides to go through that midlife crisis and forget about their family. Now they're old and they have no family around them, you see, kind of thing. And then, of course, this goes from 65 until you're dead, all right? All right. See you next week. Have fun on your take-home test.